Welcome to another episode of Football Performance with MKF. Today we have Julian from F.I.T Healthcare.
Hi mate, how you going?
Good, thank you. How are you, Julian?
Very well, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about what you do, a little bit about F.I.T Healthcare.
Yeah, so I'm a chiropractor by trade. So I deal with a lot of different injuries, whether it's from general public or from the sports area. So started up F.I.T Healthcare about 3 years ago now. Got myself, got physio, look at getting massaging as well, because I feel like that would be great sort of combination. Been working here and have a big focus in on the sports injuries.
Yep.
It's something that I've always liked dealing with, and so I love having sports people come in and dealing with all their injuries, and that's sort of where we focus in here at F.I.T Healthcare.
That's awesome, man. For some of the viewers at home that might be a little bit confused between a physio and a chiro, just a brief description in your view.
Get this all the bloody time. So physio and chiro, look, both professions are heading the same way. All right. Chiros are often known for the adjustments, the cracking, all that sort of stuff. Yep. Physio is known for more sports injuries, muscle-related stuff. These days, both are sort of heading the same way. So your physios, they're starting to do a bit of joint work and even adding in adjustments. Whereas chiros, we're doing a lot of muscle work as well. We still have the adjustments, but we're sort of combining more tools together, which is great, because I feel you want to approach things from more than one angle. And
100%.
Joints,
multifaceted.
Yeah, correct. And the joints, the muscles, they all work together. And if you're just hitting one area, you're not solving a problem as effectively as you could.
Yep.
So I like the way things are heading.
That's awesome, man. Like, how long have you been a chiropractor for?
I should know this off the top of my head. I think 5-6 years now.
That's amazing. So you've got a wide experience now of a lot of sports players coming in.
Oh, I've seen all sorts of different injuries, mate, from simple strains to, your more complex stuff. Seen a big range at the moment, yeah.
And in that time period, what is probably the most common injury you've seen in terms of sports players?
Ooh. There's been a lot. You get a lot of strains. You get your ankle sprains, which is super common. A lot of hamstring stuff, which again is super common, but something that can be easily avoided. But a lot of people aren't doing the right things to avoid them. But so I'd say that'd be up there, and a lot of shoulder problems as well, depending on the sport. Soccer, I'd say it's more isolated to your hammies. Get a fair few knee problems, stuff like meniscus as well is quite common.
Cartilage.
They're a little bit more tricky. But definitely manageable, and definitely can get back into playing. Just got to follow the right steps, I guess.
100%.
Yeah.
And then especially with soccer players, there's also those really sort of season-ending injuries as well, like the ACL, PCL, and all that sort of stuff as well. Yeah,
not fun stuff, those guys. But definitely something you can recover from and get back into playing. They are definitely more lengthy process.
Yep.
I've had many successful recoveries from ACL, whether they needed surgery or not, because sometimes you can get away without getting surgery, but sometimes it's necessary. So they're complicated. They're not fun, but
100%. Do you have some sneaky tips for a couple of people that might have some ACL surgeries happening, or they're recovering from ACLs?
Yeah, a good tip. If the integrity of a joint, if there's been something some damage in a joint that has compromised its integrity, great way to recover is by actually working around it. So say if a ligament, you've torn ACL, MCL, PCL, all of them, you want to get the muscles around it to take over a bit of the load. because muscles can deal with a fair bit of load, especially if you strengthen them up well. So getting the hammies, getting the quads working well. Another thing for knees is, I always like to say, the knee is a stupid joint. It often follows what the ankle, what the hip does. So if you get the ankle, balance, you get your balance well, you get ankle moving right, functioning well, you get your hip nice and strong, nice and mobile, then the knee often follows in and starts playing nicely. It's when the other areas aren't working well that knee really stresses out. So even with your example of ACL, get the glutes firing, get them working really well, goes a long way.
100%, and that's what I notice in a lot of athletes as well, especially football players. Glutes are probably one of the most inactive muscles that's ever been trained.
So common. Yeah, I'd say most people can use a good glute workout, get it firing, but it's the way we are these days with the office jobs, students sitting in their chairs all day. It allows the glute to become inactive. So we need to train that. We need to train it to work when we need it to work.
Definitely, and that's going to help pass down the strength into the knee and then into the ankle as well, to keep the whole sort of the whole chain stable.
Yep, definitely.
And then you also mentioned you work with some sports teams as well. What's been your experience with working in sports teams?
Yeah, sports teams, it's very different to clinic life, I guess, but definitely enjoyable. Worked with this season, did the Concord Briars, that's rugby club. Lots of very different injuries to football, but they have because it's quite intense, high impact sport. You get a lot of concussions. You get had a fair few broken bones, broken thumbs, fingers, shoulder injuries, just because they get in those awkward positions. But it's a good experience. A lot of your acute injury management, which a lot of people, there's a lot of controversy around how to best look after an injury when it first happens. Do you use ice? Do you use heat? Should I take
the rice method?
The rice, all that sort of stuff. So so a lot of people don't know how to manage properly, and if you can look after an injury well when it first happens, it goes a long way into sort of quickening up the rehab process. So getting that right is pretty important.
100%. That leads nicely into my question, which is, a player gets injured, what would be sort of the first protocol you would recommend once they sort of a strain, a niggly injury, something happens? What would be sort of the first stage?
So the they love their acronyms, right? You got your RICE, your PRICE, all that sort of stuff. The one that is most widely accepted at the moment is PEACE. You have PEACE. So you want to protect the area, don't let any further damage happen to it. You want to keep it elevated, E, elevation. A is avoid anti-inflammatories. So a lot of people think inflammation is negative, and that's not entirely true. Inflammation is a necessary part of healing, right? It brings, all the white blood cells to the area, gets blood to the area to help with the healing process. If you don't have that, it doesn't heal well, right? So having anti-inflammatories isn't going to help that. It's going to delay that. So you'd want to avoid that. Now, with chronic issues, chronic inflammation, that's a different story. But we're talking about, your acute injuries, as soon as it happens, what you do. So in those circumstances, avoid.
So for some people that might not know what an anti-inflammatory is, would you...
Yeah, like you might have heard of Voltaren, whether it's the tablet or gel. That's a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. And it just helps prevent inflammation, get rid of inflammation. And again, that's necessary in a lot of circumstances. In this one, not so much.
We want it to be able to recover.
Yeah, correct. So then there was C, compression. So compress the area with whatever you have around the, compression socks for ankles, or, get a bit of tape, whatever it is, compress the area to avoid that excessive inflammation, swelling, right? And then education. So education as to what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And that's, someone like me, that's where we come in. And educate as to what to avoid doing, what you should be doing in terms of recovery and all that sort of stuff. So peace is the way to go, mate.
Peace, but then E is also getting it diagnosed and not doing a sort of Google diagnosis on yourself, which is what Dr. I see Google, a lot of people doing as well. So
Dr. Google can be misleading. And getting a proper diagnosis is quite important. Unfortunately, there are a lot of misdiagnosed issues, and the earlier you can get a proper diagnosis, the better chance you have of doing the right things to aid with your recovery. So definitely.
100%, and like that misdiagnosis is so important because it can mean from either a side ankle strain to an inner ankle strain. There's almost like two different ways that you're going to rehab the ankle.
Correct.
And that's going to cause impacts all the way up the leg and up that chain. So
Yep, I agree 100%.
And I'm sure you've probably seen it as well, clients walking in, they're like, I got this injury, and they just expect you to do something where it's like, hold on.
I definitely have had that happen, and I've had to sit them down and say, look, that doesn't seem to be the case for you. And sometimes it is misdiagnosis by a practitioner. Sometimes it's just Dr. Google having a search online, and they're like, all right, this sounds about right. But that you want to make sure that you get that proper diagnosis. That way we know, okay, this is the path we need to take. Because my job to get you better as quick as possible. And having a good diagnosis is what allows us to get there.
100%. And the next part of getting better quicker is you've prescribed the sort of rehab program for them. You've gone through sessions with them. A lot of people do the rehab program and then they'll just stop because they're like, sweet, Julian's done his job, I feel okay, and they just continue normal. But then what happens after that?
Correct. So once you injure certain structure, your chances of re-injury are quite high. So you want to make sure you look after it. You recover well, but then you maintain some sort of program so that you then don't have re-injure it. And a lot of people, as soon as they get out of that painful phase, that's it. They go back to how they were before, training, and forget all their rehab and all that sort of stuff. But it's important to maintain. You might not need to do it as often, but you want to still make sure that you're engaging glutes if that's part of your rehab, or doing whatever it is that just keeps you in good nick so that you don't overload whatever the injured site was and then re-injure it, which unfortunately happens quite often. And that comes down to a lot of education, letting them know their chances of re-injury and exactly how they should proceed outside of pain, and how to get back into their sport in a safe way, rather than jumping straight in and going from out for 6 weeks to playing straight away on the weekend at competition
intensity.
Pace. That's a risky way to approach things, and a lot of people do that. So educating people on how to best approach that aspect can really go a long way to help prevent those re-injuries.
100%. And I think like one of the best ways it was explained to me was with an ankle injury. Now, you can't quantify force, but the way that they explained it was, you've got, say, 100, your ankle can bear 100 newtons of force, you roll it, it's no longer at 100, it's at 90. You've done the correct rehab work, it doesn't really go past that 90, it sits in that weird phase. So now all you need, that weird space, now all you need is maybe 90, 91, you roll it again and it just continues almost degenerating to a point where it becomes a chronic sort of ankle sprain. But then if you do the rehab program and you continue, like what you said, strengthening on top, it no longer becomes 90, it becomes maybe 100, 150, 200, and the strength of the joint and the integrity increases, and the chance of re-injury reduces significantly after.
And that's why some sort of like strength and conditioning program after rehab is quite important.
Yep.
Because the rehab is there to get you back to functioning capacity, being able to do what want to do in life, back in sport, what have you. But then having some sort of conditioning afterwards is quite important, and that allows you to even get better than what you were before, like you were just saying. So that's really important, actually.
And then also you've probably done thousands of assessments on players. What would you say are some sort of common posture issues that you see with a lot of people that come in? Because I know there's going to be a lot of desk posture that I see in my training, the inactive glutes, the whole lot. This is some stuff that players can sort of focus on now. If they're just sitting down watching the video, they're like, I need to work on that.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. There's a lot out there. A few key areas is hip mobility. So, making sure your hips are nice and mobile, as well as being active in areas like the glutes. That can go a long way into just making sure that you're in a good spot to prevent injury, right? A lot of people have very stiff hips, whether it's from the hamstrings, which is a common one, or into the glutes as well. Another one is that mid-thoracic area, right? That mid-back, mid to upper back. A lot of people are quite stiff there, and that just comes down to how they function day to day. Just leaves them more prone to being quite stiff. So making sure you're nice and mobile there. So doing a lot of mobility drills versus stretching, right? A lot of people, they'll focus in on stretches, which there is nothing wrong with that. That is great. But you want to make sure that the joints are nice and mobile where they need to be. So doing a lot of mobility stuff for that upper back can work wonders.
100%. And to touch up on that as well, you've got to think of the upper back as not just one bone. It's a sequence of small bones. So every single small one needs to be able to flex and extend and then rotate somewhat as well. So it's not just thinking about, it's just one bone and we just do this. It's like everything sort of needs to be able to move, not just like one sort of joint.
Yeah, the more control you have over your body, the better you're going to be, right? If you're using, whatever part of the body in just one particular way versus being able to control it, like the shoulder. The shoulder's designed to move in every way possible, right? So if you just restrict that and only move it in a certain way, then it creates imbalances and higher risk of injury from that. Same thing for the upper back. If you're only moving it in a certain way, using it as just one big movement, then you're not functioning how you're meant to be. And that can lead to an increased risk of injury. So I think getting that mobility in that upper back, mid back, very, very important.
And I think one of the great ways to start is the foam rolling.
Love the foam roller. Yeah, definitely. So foam roller. There's a few different ways you can use the foam roller. One of the ways that I see all the time is when people are lying with a foam roller across their back and they're rolling up and down on that foam roller. And look, that's not wrong. That's targeting more the muscle side of things. But like I said before, your muscles, your joints, they work together, right? So settling down and making sure the muscles are nice and relaxed is very important. But then making sure that the joints as well are moving well is can complement that. And just takes your sort of functioning to the next level. So instead of just rolling up and down, you stay still and let your back extend over that foam roller. That's a great way to get those joints functioning. One of my favorite ways. I always recommend that exercise.
Especially just as a key tip, when you first start doing that, you're going to feel almost like a plank of wood, I call it, because a lot of people have very poor movement in the back. So you're going to feel like you're stuck in a certain position. It's okay, take your time. I call it little mini sit-ups, just control and just to help gently move it.
Yeah.
Because like we said, you don't want to stress and just yank the back into that position.
It's a slow, controlled, easy movement, and over time you'll notice a difference, right? You're right. It's going to start off tough. It's going to start off very tough, but the more you do it, the easier that gets, and before you know it, mate, you'll be able to control every little segment in there. But again, takes work, mate, like anything.
And then you also mentioned about the shoulder where it gets restricted. A lot of people will start to get over that restriction, but then they might not have full memory control or muscle control of that joint, and now they've got extra range, but they don't have control of that range. As a potential injury for there as well.
Well, that's the thing. When it comes to an area like the shoulder, which is so mobile, you need to be able to control it. If you don't, then you're putting that area under stress. And when areas get put under stress, eventually they push it too much, and you get your aches, your pains, your injuries there. So yes, every area needs control, but especially those areas where there's that high mobility, the hips, the joints being the big ones there.
As they're being ball and socket, so they can really move around in any sort of position.
Correct. So making sure that with training, you want to work on flexibility with stretching. You want to work on mobility, but you also like strength and all that sort of stuff is great. But if you don't have the control behind it, then you're asking for trouble. So making sure that you're able to control things and make it work how it's meant to work, how you want it to work, is really important.
100%, and I think you summed it up nicely, making sure it's not just doing the stretching, which is amazing, the mobility work, and then including stuff like the foam roller, some massage balls as well, stretching sticks, stuff that's going to help you move in that extra sort of range that you might not be able to do it yourself, but you can get that assistance from those items.
Correct, and if you can sort of hit all those areas, when you go to like a sports scenario, your functioning is much higher, therefore your risk of injury is less, right? If you're able to control things, then you're not putting yourself in a stressful position, like when you're going up for a header and then you land, right? You can get a knock on the way down. If you're not good at controlling yourself, your ankle can give way, your knee can give way, you'll overload one area more than it's capable of withstanding, and there's your injury. So being able to really control things and making sure that your functioning is as high as it can be. Doesn't have to be strength. It's in many different areas. Strength, coordination, all that sort of stuff.
Perfect. Absolutely amazing. Julian, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.